Hey my friends, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. Today we are going to go to Cavalry Cemetery, not a cemetery that I went to a whole lot when I lived here, but I want to go today because I want to go visit the grave of one who died very young. She was a movie star in her day that was very controversial. She was very beloved. We're gonna go visit the grave of the great Mabel Normand today. Daze with Jordan the Lion and the Joster, it begins right now. She had a pretty sad life. I mean, she had a big life at one point, and then it was just very sad. Go ahead, Ja. Enjoy yourself. This one's actually south of downtown Los Angeles. These are the new bridges down here. They were not completed when I lived here. 6th Street Bridge. Here we are. I think I've only been here once or twice. It says that she's in the main mausoleum. So I believe this is what we are looking for. The final resting place of Mabel Normand Cody, I believe, is in here, passing away of tuberculosis at just the age of 38. I believe we have to go up. It looks like she's in the 300 block. Those were all 200s. As soon as I came up the stairs, I noticed some interesting art up here. And as soon as I came around the corner, here she is. The birth year is not correct. You can see her mother is above her. That answers that question. I was kind of wondering why she was here. But yeah, she was actually born in 1892. She was a little firecracker. She was known as a wild child. She was the youngest of 12. And she just always had that get up and go crazy, go out and have fun spirit ever since she was a little kid. They say she used to swim from Staten Island to New Jersey and back in the Hudson River every day. And that she ended up getting a really good body as a teenager because of that, and she would model for a dress magazine for 50 cents, 50 cents an hour, until she got on a D.W. Griffith movie set as an extra where she made 5 times that. She loved it, and so she decided that she wanted to do that instead, except one of the nights that she was working, they didn't get out of there till late, and when she got home, her mother was just beside herself and said, "You're not gonna act in movies anymore, I only want you to do the modeling." So she started doing that again, but then ended up meeting Max Sennett and getting involved in Vitagraph, and she ended up falling in love with Max Sennett, who was ends up becoming a very famous director. So they fall in love, and she's making movies at Vitagraph, and eventually he ends up taking off for Hollywood without her. Kind of breaks her heart, but he goes out to start Keystone Studios, and then she eventually comes out and joins him and becomes the damsel in distress for all the Keystone Cop movies. Mabel was very lovable on screen. That wild child and everything, that came out on screen, and she had just an amazing amount of charisma. What was also amazing was that she could spot good talent, and ended up working with Charlie Chaplin early on. And apparently Max Sennett wasn't that happy with his performance and wanted to let him go. And Mabel said, "No, let me work with him. I think I can get something good out of him." And she ended up making his first movie with him, even though it didn't come out first. She made his first movie and then got Max Sennett to let her direct some of the pictures. So she was the first person to apparently ever take a pie in the face in the Keystone Cop movies. And she was great at comedy. I mean, her facial expressions and everything, she was just absolutely great. She made over a dozen pictures with Charlie Chaplin before he went off on his own. She made like 17 with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. And like I said, she was in love with Max Sennett. Seems like she was very in love with him, and he just didn't want to make a commitment to her. And eventually she ends up catching him in bed, which I vlogged where that happened. She catches him in bed with Mae Bush, and if I remember, like she hit her over the head with a vase or something. But because of that, Mabel went into seclusion for a while, and you know, Max Sennett's trying to win her back because they were engaged at the time, and Mabel wouldn't talk to him for so long that he finally starts making promises to her. Like, he promises to give her her own studio and to let her direct more, and that he will help her come up with her own production company. And she wants to write something, so he agrees to finance it. So she gets all this stuff and then ends up leaving him anyway. And well, she had this thing, this production she was working on called Mickey, that was supposed to come out, and everybody knew it, but it was just taking forever. So she started making publicity about Mickey, and so when it came out, it was a hit, and she took that to just parlay it into a contract at Goldwyn and left Max Sennett. One of her problems, though, is that, you know, that wild child I told you about, she was like that off screen as well, and that went into drugs and alcohol, and she had a lot of problems with that. And so Max Sennett would kind of try and save her, but she ended up befriending William Desmond Taylor, who was a director, and a lot of people believed that he was closeted gay, but it wasn't known then. And some people believe that they were having an affair, and so, or that he was her drug supplier. He actually helped her get into rehab and was trying to help her clean up her life because she just had so much turmoil. He was teaching her how to read. They were good friends, and one night she was visiting him at his house, and then he walked her out to her car. She left, and he was found the next day shot in his home, laying in a pool of blood. And they immediately started questioning her, accusing her, but after the police did a thorough investigation, they deemed that she had nothing to do with it. But just based on her well-known lifestyle, people started to turn on her. And I mean, she was a young woman at this point. She was still in her 20s. Then she goes to a very small New Year's party held by a wealthy man named Cortland Dimes. She tells her bodyguard, who she didn't know, or apparently no one knew, was an ex-convict going by a different name. She told him that if she got too drunk, to make sure that she got out of there. And so she gets drunk. He tries to get her out of there. She starts fighting back with him. Cortland Dimes steps in and makes a comment about Mabel, and the driver ends up pulling out a gun and shooting him and killing him. And it was Mabel's gun. So then that controversy happens. And then she ends up having an appendectomy, goes to the hospital, and some man that she barely ever, even talked to in the hospital, his wife comes out and makes public accusations saying that Mabel was committing adultery with her husband. So it was just, she just had so much turmoil. And then you notice that she was married. That was basically just a man named Lou Cody, who was an actor and a well-known partier. And they went out and got drunk one night, and he jokingly got down on his knee, proposed to her. She said yes, and they drove off to Ventura County, woke up a judge, and got married in the middle of the night. So you're a very impulsive person. She basically ended up becoming unemployable, and because of all the controversy, people they really didn't want to see her in anything. And then she contracted tuberculosis and was in a sanatorium and basically just rotted away there. They knew that there was nothing that they could do to save her. It was called Pottinger Sanatorium in Monrovia, and it's actually where the Monrovia Community Center parking lot is now. They bulldozed the old sanatorium to put the parking lot there. That's for a year she was in there just wasting away until she finally died at the age of 38 years old. But she was such a pioneer comedian and in the silent movies and everything. Is just such a sad tale to hear about. I just often wonder, you know, like people like her, I wonder how many people remember her and come and visit her. When she ended up passing away, her funeral, the pallbearers were Fatty Arbuckle and Max Sennett, Charlie Chaplin, people that were very close to her in her life like that. And the murder of William Desmond Taylor that they always accused her of was never solved. Apparently throughout her, you know, from the time it happened till the time she died, every time a new district attorney would come in, they would try and resurrect it to kind of make a name for themselves. And, you know, even to this day, it's still not solved. I have made a video on that. I went and showed, it's now like a Ross department store, but where his house was, where he was killed. And then we went to his grave and we told all the stories and the thoughts about his. She's actually buried here by actor John Hodiak. If you remember John Hodiak. You know, sadly, it always just kind of, to me, always kind of seemed like it came down to a woman who fell in love, and the first person she fell in love with just broke her heart so bad it sent her on a tailspin. I think if Max Sennett and her would have worked out and he wouldn't have, you know, kind of strung her along for years and cheated on her and all that stuff, I think maybe she wouldn't have went down the road that she went down, but you know, who knows? Rest in peace, Miss Mabel Norman Cody. Never to be forgotten in the film industry. The great damsel in distress from the Keystone Cops. And Mickey. Some other notable people that are buried here, Lou Costello from Abbott and Costello, and Ramon Navarro from Ben-Hur. And this mausoleum apparently does a mass every day. Well, my friends, we're gonna call it a day. If you were not familiar with Mabel Norman, how important she was and her sad tale, I hope that you learned something today. I hope you'll go watch some of her work, and thank you all for watching. We're gonna call it a day. Have a great night and goodbye.